What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 159 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. And today we got a hot topic. This is very timely. Forecasting your inventory. That's there's a lot of talk about that right now with all of the stuff going on with Amazon and the challenges there. But we could not be more excited. Joining us today, Nader Youngchild. What's up, Nader?
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And we'll jump into all of that, talking about inventory. And but before we do that, we'd love for anybody who doesn't know you, doesn't know Data Driven. We'd love to just give you the floor for a minute to introduce yourself and tell your background of how you got started in e-commerce in general.
Sure, absolutely. E-commerce in general.
Or anything.
That
Or what do
changes my
you
answer.
do? You can do your whole story. Give us your whole
Nice.
story.
Okay, sure. So I'm the CEO and founder of Data Driven. We help brands grow on Amazon. We build them a strategy and we help them execute that strategy. We use data at the core to go from data to insights to action. And that's how we build out the strategy and then execute it with the brands that we work with. We can kind of go into a lot more of that later. But in terms of my story, how I ended up here, I'm a former Amazonian. I left Amazon in 2013. My time at Amazon was spent helping large brands capture their brand prowess on the Amazon marketplace. And so I got the keen privilege of learning all the ins and outs of Amazon from the inside, learning about their algorithms, what metrics they weight, how much they weight those metrics, how that varies category by category. And at the time, it was to apply it to these really large CPG brands, mostly in the consumable space, inside of Amazon, so that to serve Amazon, so that Amazon could have large brands that customers would recognize in key categories, and to these brands, effort helping make Amazon more of a relevant channel for them. So this was kind of back. Amazon was still not quite as large as they are today in the consumable space. And then had a great time doing that. And then I was actually an entrepreneur before my time at Amazon. I'd started the first grocery delivery business in the Pacific Northwest, pretty much the West Coast as well. That was the only real competitor at the time was Peapods over in the East Coast. This would have been back in 2008. And we built the company built some automation around how to understand customers and when they would need products and what products they would need and what products we could maybe get in large bulk to serve many people. And we delivered that. We were executing on islands in the Puget Sound up here in the Pacific Northwest. And then we had moved over to Seattle. And then shortly after that, Amazon had launched Amazon Fresh, their pilot program in Seattle. And then long story short, we got contacted by the local news that said, hey, we were going to do a segment to tell everyone about Amazon Fresh. We wanted to compare them to a local company. You guys are the only ones delivering groceries. Would you mind if we compared you on a live segment? We were like, holy cow, this is the greatest thing ever. Of course, we were young. What we should have realized was we just went from 0 competitors to 1, and maybe the largest and fastest growing company going to be in the space for the next couple decades. So needless to say, that ended up transitioning into some interactions with Amazon. If I knew then what I know now, I would have certainly tried to move that more into an acquisitions play and trying to play up more value that we could have created for Amazon. But I didn't. I was young. I was running a company out of a dorm room, and I came from a blue collar family. I didn't have much background or folks to kind of talk about this type of situation. So I told my partner I needed to leave our company, and I just parlayed our interactions into an interview with Amazon. And that's how I ended up at Amazon in this role. So that said, while my time at Amazon, I knew I always wanted to go back to entrepreneurship. And so after learning kind of the insider information about what was happening on the platform and how it was being run, I said, let me go out and help brands that maybe aren't these large brands, and let me help brands that maybe I don't know, I can get behind a little bit more emotionally and intellectually. And so I really enjoyed my time at Amazon, but I left and was able to take those insights and understandings of the platform and start to apply them with brands that I really wanted to work with and was excited about them being able to grow and interact with consumers. And I ran that for about 5 years. And then I got into kind of classical entrepreneurial story of what got you here isn't going to get you there. A couple things were true. Secrets weren't secrets anymore. Everybody knew everything ish about what was happening on Amazon. One, two, the space was becoming crowded. There was a lot more either also ex-Amazonians or folks that didn't have experience inside of Amazon, but for other various reasons had valuable insights about what to do on their Amazon business, whether they were Amazon sellers or different reasons. And so the space was getting crowded, and so supply was growing, demand was growing, but supply was growing faster than demand. So we were getting into classical, race to the bottom situation, right? It was becoming a commodity, and guidance of Amazon businesses was getting cheaper and cheaper. So about 5 years in, I said, do I want to join this race to the bottom, or do I want to leave the industry entirely, or do I want to pivot and transition into something different that kind of sidesteps me out of this race to the bottom that I didn't want to be a part of? So enter data driven. So I stopped running my consulting firm, and that's when my partner now, Samar Parikh, former Amazonian, had spent about 7 years there. He's actually my former boss while at Amazon. He was just finishing up being a major leader on the Amazon's acquisition of PillPack to enter into pharmacy. And so he was kind of closing a really big project for himself and was looking for something new and what was next for him. I was able to convince him to join me, and we built Data Driven. And so that's when we said, let's find a way to do everything we used to do to help brands grow on Amazon by knowing what's happening, understanding the insights of why it's happening, and then helping them understand what to do next. How much of that can we get software to do on our behalf, and how can we start to use big data so that we can start advising all brands based off of the causality and the correlations that we see across all of these brands. And so that was kind of the birth of Data Driven. And so we've been serving brands now under the Data Driven name for a couple of years, and really excited about the work that we're doing. It's been really empowering. We to see how much a computer can do what we used to do as humans, and kind of take that cost entirely out of the equation for us, but then also for the brands that we serve, so we can give brands a lot of really great guidance that used to take us a lot of man hours and high paying consulting efforts, and get even better guidance for a much lower cost. So that's where we are. That's the e-commerce journey. You said e-commerce, so I figured I had to go back to the grocery delivery days.
That's why I love doing this podcast and talking to people and hearing their journeys. I think there's so much to unpack in just that brief overview of your journey. I mean,
Sure.
you've done a lot. It is always fun also to talk to ex-Amazonians. I mean, you have that inside knowledge of what's going on. Did you enjoy your time there at Amazon while you were there? Good place to work?
It's an interesting question. Did I enjoy my time? Was it a good place to work? I would say that I deeply enjoyed my time at Amazon, primarily because of the lens in which I was viewing it through. If I was viewing my time at Amazon through the lens of I want to have a work-life balance, and I want to kind of casually learn while, I don't know, having other priorities in life, that would be a lens I would say that I wouldn't have enjoyed working at Amazon. But the lens that I was able to wear during my time was I want to learn as much as I can and be deeply entrenched in the scale that Amazon touches and the experimentation that they do as business leaders. And I got that. And so, I mean, there were times, many nights that, they're late into the wee hours of the morning, would shower at the office after a quick jog in the morning. It was you're all in when you're there, especially in the consumable space where it's just really high volume, high frequency. And so what happens in that environment is if something is wrong, then it's a high frequency and a high volume of something wrong going on. And or if you can find the right things to do or make the right decisions, again, it's a high frequency or high volume of those right decisions. So it's a really high consequence place to play in. And so I really appreciated that opportunity and that kind of platform to operate on. Before I was my startup was helping customers. Basically, what I did was we ran our grocery delivery business everywhere where there was massive barriers to entry for customers to get groceries. So we went to islands first, where there's a ferry toll, a ferry line, a ferry. After that, we went to high-rise apartments in downtown Seattle that didn't have parking garages. So we went to the people that it was going to be a pain in the butt to get their car wherever it was, or if they didn't have one, bring groceries on a bus. And so that scale, it was great to connect deeply with a customer in that way, but the scale was not very big, right? You every couple of weeks you're adding 15, 20 more customers. Whereas on Amazon, you're able to start making decisions like, hey, we're losing this much money because we're allowing things over 5 pounds to ship in the air to get prime shipping. Well, we can literally save like $20 million over the next 40 days if we stop over 5 pound items, stuff like that. So that level of scale was really exciting, and I really appreciated that opportunity. And it was one I don't know how long I would have had been working at my startup to ever touch. So the lens that I had going into Amazon helped me really enjoy my time there. Yeah, there you go.
I'll tell you what, the grocery delivery, you were way ahead of your time on that one.
Yeah, I know, man. I picked a pandemic. I could have picked the timing of a pandemic a little better,
huh? But it's a brilliant concept. I mean, really, in picking those locations. We were just talking beforehand about all the different islands that are around up there. And I guess it is difficult to get to a store or to a grocery store. Is it all ferries?
It
Mostly?
is, yeah. I mean, I was young. I was 18. I just turned 18 years old when we decided to start this business. My partner and I. He was a coder, and I was everything that we did outside of coding. And one of the things that we needed to solve was we had to go to school, and we lived in a dorm, and we didn't have cars. But we thought that there was a need, and so we said, how can we play with this idea to kind of test the market and see if there's a product market fit? And I was like, well, we can't afford marketing, can't afford advertising, we can't even afford to even deliver these products to the customers that we want to serve. And so I was like, how can we get crafty? It's the classic entrepreneur, and you have no resources, you get creative. So for us, we decided, let's find an island that has 10,000 people that live on it, and all of them, there's no jobs on the island, so all of them go to work in Seattle, and so all of them cross about 20 feet of pavement to get onto a ferry line every single day. And so if we can just spend Saturdays illegally giving flyers to people sitting waiting to cross this ferry, we can impact a lot of people with a little bit of effort. So that's where we started, and kind of just grew from there, and just tried to stay creative and scrappy, really, with a lack of resources. But my partner still runs. He evolved the company. He still runs that company today. It's now called Products, Prodx, and he's kind of the secret tech company that powers most grocery store search bars that nobody really knows is going on. So we had this crazy problem where people. So our first website was literally a white page with, you just started typing however you decided to describe your grocery list was what we got, and we had to go manifest that into groceries and get it to your house. That was crazy to try that. I would never try that again today. But what we found was there was a huge problem in people would describe milk like 50 different ways, even though they wanted something specific. It was pretty wild, all the terms that people would throw in there and describing it. And so what we had to do is we had to build some algorithms that basically helped us break down every quality and feature of milk and way that you could describe milk, and then find a way to take people's descriptions and pinpoint that into the actual product that they wanted, right? So it's Dairy Gold 2% half gallon milk is what they want. Oftentimes they don't type Dairy Gold 2% half gallon milk. And so Brody ran with that. So we did it to serve our need of getting what people actually wanted. And Brody really ran with that and has built out a pretty substantial company since then, where he does basically just that. And basically lots of grocery stores now API in and out. So their search results and the drop downs are all powered by those algorithms that he continued on and devoted his life to. Pretty awesome.
That is awesome. All from a conversation in a dorm room and an idea. I love stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, it's funny where I was reflecting on this with a friend the other day. It's interesting the little moments that are the pivots of your whole life, right? Because you almost never know them when you're in them. But when you reflect back, you're like if that didn't happen, all of this might never have, if that pivot point didn't happen, this wouldn't, the carry on. It's crazy. It's an interesting.
And what's
concept
funny
for
is
sure.
you want the moment, like you're always looking for that moment, and you never know that that moment is like happening, like you just mentioned, until it's already been passed, and you're like, "Damn it! I've been trying to get to the moment, and it just kind of snuck up on me."
Yeah. That's funny you say that, Chris. I've been reading books of, I can't remember, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I've been trying to play more with this concept of open time for those moments to occur, because it's so easy, especially as business owners, to be like, if I'm not busy, I'm not driving my initiatives. But it's interesting when you reflect back on what actually moved your business in directions that are powerful for you today. If you look back at 2 years, you're like, oh, that didn't come from me just being diligent about clearing my inbox, or that didn't come from this thing that I seem to spend like 80% of my time doing. So I'm trying to play more with this, giving myself the space and time and environments and engagements that that as I reflect back were the powerful ones that I never really honored in the past. But I don't know. It's a hard battle because the inbox fills up.
Yeah. Oh, all the time.
Yeah. I mean, if I look back, a lot of those times, a lot of those points were actually at the time super challenging. Like there were problems, but that turned into being a point where there was a pivot, and it turned out, much better on the other side. So I think that, yeah, it's definitely the life of more of an entrepreneurial spirit, where you're taking different chances, doing different things. And then like the fact that I'm, talking on a podcast about, e-commerce and selling on Amazon is amazing, because I was a tennis pro forever. And I just, I've told that story many times, but you just never know. You take these chances and you start different things, and cool things work out. But yeah, I like that mentality that you bring up. But all right, well, let's shift a little bit. Let's now talk about data driven, and let's talk about inventory, and especially with Amazon right now. How do you, through data driven, how do you help your clients better predict the inventory levels they need? I mean, there's so much going on right now with inventory restrictions, with logistical nightmares, with maybe an unknown and how big your sales bump's going to be this Q4. How do you help people manage their inventory so they don't stock out and lose rank, etc.?
Absolutely. I would say the two principles that it really comes down to is, are we using enough data to make our predictions? And are those predictions accurate? And where they're inaccurate, are we improving them so they get better over time? So that's kind of one principle. Outside of that principle of using data to serve you to predict the future, there's a little bit of a concept of, if you're just doing it for your seller account or your business or your ASINs or your brand, you're potentially missing out on the learning that can happen at the aggregate. I'll talk about that in a second. But there's this principle of using data to try and predict the future, and then planning in accordance with that prediction. So we'll leave that as a principle for a second and come back to it. Outside of that, there's also core principles about how Amazon is built and intended to run, that if we don't honor those core principles, all of this forecasting and all of the best planning we could do and whatever tools we might use, if we're not honoring those core principles, we might be completely missing the mark. What I say by that is, Amazon was built in a certain way, and it rewards and penalizes seller accounts, whether it's their IPI score or whether it's their opportunity at more space, or even whether it's their opportunity at actually capturing the demand. It's based on particular core principles. One of those core principles is, Amazon is not at all designed to have anyone's products sitting at their fulfillment centers for more than a month. In theory, they should be coming in and going out as fast as humanly possible. A lot of sellers miss that, and they try and stock. They basically try and turn Amazon into their warehouse. Well, they're literally, when they do that, Amazon, not humans at Amazon, but the system at Amazon is designed to say, that's not how we're intended to be run. So I need to penalize you so that you're going to eventually get the picture. A lot of the sellers just don't recognize that that's what's happening. So the very first principle we need to start honoring is, products should not be at Amazon for more than a month. It's part of why Amazon charges monthly storage fees after that first month. So that's where it's like clear. It's also very unclear and not visible when in how much is Amazon penalizing you when you don't do that. That's number one. Number one principle is making sure your products are not being stocked for more than a month at a time at Amazon. Number two, the system is intended to receive your inventory once a week. Ideally, product is coming from every seller account once a week and moving out, ideally in that same week. It's okay if it's maybe up to 4 weeks. And so this ideal state that we want to start to manage our inventory at is this. I want to say I always want about 2 to 4 weeks of cover or weeks of demand throughout Amazon fulfillment centers at all times. If I do that, then if I'm growing, when I put 2 weeks in today, I might have grown, and that is actually maybe tomorrow only equivalent to 1.5 weeks. Well, having 2 to 4 weeks gives us a little bit of buffer if we're shipping in every week to never go out of stock, but it also not having more than 4 weeks at one time allows us to never be overstocked. So principle one is Amazon is not designed to be a seller's warehouse that holds products for more than a month. And the follow-on principle is ideally your products are going in weekly, maintaining 2 to 4 weeks of cover. That brings us back to our first principle, which is how do we predict? So weeks of cover is like, let's say, I don't know, you sell this cup and you're selling about 10 a week on Amazon right now. So 2 weeks of cover would be 2 times 10. So 20 units at Amazon would give me 2 weeks of cover. 40 units at Amazon would give me 4 weeks of cover. And so the big variable there is we need to predict that demand accurately. And so most tools out there, there are some tools out there today that can help brands do that only look at backward looking history. So they'll say, well, I saw you sold 12, then you sold 10, then you sold 8, and you sold 2 in a row of 10. And so your average is 10. So we think you're going to sell 10 next week. That's helpful for sure. It's definitely directionally helpful. The nice thing about when you're a vendor on Amazon is Amazon does that for you, right? They just buy the products from you. They issue purchase orders. And even in those scenarios, Amazon is actually usually plus or minus, I think it's up to like 26% wrong in their forecasts. But that's not because they have an entire building with people that just work on this problem. The reason that even Amazon is off in their predictions is because they're fundamentally looking to optimize for a different outcome. Their ideal outcome is minimizing overstock situations and minimizing their inventory liability, especially when they're buying it up front in PO situations. On the seller side, you're driving towards a different goal. Your goal is maximizing your growth potential on the marketplace. And so understanding that and understanding the levers that impact your growth and monitoring, are they going up, are they going down? What can I do to influence them moving more in the direction that I want and pivoting away from not the direction that I don't want? Whether it's conversion rate shifts or page view ups and downs or what you're doing with your advertising, there are lots of factors that go into predicting what's going to happen with forward-looking sales. Historic-looking sales usually gives us seasonality, and it gives us an understanding of your trend line. But it's a really if you just look at historical numbers, you're usually off by plus or minus 17 or 18%. It's literally better than when Amazon's doing it on the vendor side, but that can be a pretty big miss, especially when every time you're off, as I'm sure your listeners know, you don't just miss the sale when you're not there. You also are telling the system that you're not a reliable supplier for their demand. And next time you're going to get a less likely to convert impression because of it. And so it becomes this vicious flywheel downhill. So it's really important that we start to use exogenous factors that are impacting our sales, not just historical what happened with sales. So data-driven does that. So in terms of what our clients experience, they just get told product X, ship this many units in this week. Product Y, ship this many in. Next week, here we are again. And all of it is maintaining that 2 to 4 weeks of cover. Now, not every seller is capable of that, right? We might not have a warehouse in the US. And so we might need to quasi leverage Amazon as our warehouse. And so our P&L needs to absorb that impact. And so there's different ways that we can kind of do, but we try and help our brands and sellers get closer and closer to being able to run in accordance with those principles that the system is built to run on. And then once that's in place, we start to look at all these exogenous factors, such as conversion rate shifts, how your advertising is impacting it, what your future plans are with advertising or promotions. Obviously, buy box is a big one. If you're a reseller of something that a lot of other people are selling, buy box is basically you need to take whatever your forecasted demand is and then say, I only have 20% of it, or whatever your average, trailing buy box is. Yeah, maybe I'll pause there. That was a bit. I don't know if
There's just so much variables. Like there, and when you do one SKU and you go to two SKUs and three, you're just multiplying it for every time. It just becomes
yeah,
way too much to handle.
Mm-hmm.
it really is. And I literally used to do it all manually, and it is it's too much. I mean, one even extremely skilled, talented, experienced Amazon person, it's tough to even do that for more than 10 SKUs perfectly. And Amazon's all about, if you perfect execution gets you perfect results. And if you're giving yourself an impossible task, you won't accomplish that, and you oftentimes don't get the results that you want. And so in our case, creating tools to help us get there, or in other sellers' case, finding partners that have tools that can help them get there to the perfect execution is really key, especially in this post-ish COVID world where it was over 1 million new seller accounts created last year, and it's becoming a hyper-competitive space. And so within that, you're starting to say, okay, the difference is not just, I know I need 6 images and maybe add A+ content, and these other newbies don't know that. I mean, that's table stakes now, right? Like the simple boxes to check, everyone's checking them. And so the kind of delta between the winners and the losers is getting smaller and smaller, and it's all coming down to perfect execution. And Amazon is the one platform where I would say supply chain and operations is probably the most impactful on their platform. Your Shopify account, for example, is going to care a heck of a lot more about traffic. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
Shopify doesn't really care about your supply chain metrics, whereas Amazon platform does in a really big way. Walmart, they're rewarding quite a bit with proper content and copy right now, in a way that Amazon isn't, right? It's just different life cycles of the platforms. But so supply chain and operations is absolutely critical, and is probably the big unlock to growth potentials that brands and sellers don't even, because it's not very visible, they probably don't even consider or even recognize that that's what's in front of them if they could get that right.
A lot of what you were talking about with the way that you're forecasting models and the data that you're bringing in to predict these was really fascinating to me. Because I mean, I'm in a situation right now where I'm trying to relaunch a product. One of my products used to be a bestseller. I'm relaunching it, and a struggle I've had is knowing how much I should be sending in. Like, now that I'm going aggressive on my advertising campaigns, it's like I'm having a hard time predicting what the impact's going to be, as I move from like page 2 to page 1, and then sort of the top of page 1 organically. What kind of sales velocity am I going to be anticipating? Because I've already screwed this up. I already didn't send in enough inventory the first time. And then with the check-in delays and stuff that are happening right now, I missed time. I happened to be out of stock for a couple of days, which was not the end of the world, but not great. So your system, you mentioned it's taking into account like your ad spend and what you're doing with your campaigns. I mean, is that something that if I was using data driven, that I'm inputting, like I'm getting ready to do more of like a ranking aggressive campaign, or is it picking it up right out of the ad spend and what's happening?
Absolutely. I would say both. So if you didn't tell us, if you weren't working with like one of our account managers, just using the platform by yourself, it would pick it up. Absolutely. In certain cases though, when our clients, or we are advising to the clients that they should pick this up based off of this intel, or based off of these inputs and outputs that we're seeing happening for them, that they should start to ratchet it up, we can run basically manual overrides. But the system picks it up, right? So anything any seller does to an Amazon business, it shows up in the results, right? Conversion rates are impacted, page views are impacted, sometimes your reviews are impacted. What else? Your category rank is impacted. Depending on your seller situation, maybe your buy box is impacted. And so there's several outputs that the system is basically saying, here's the interaction. You did X, you did input X. I'm seeing output A, B, C, and D. And those changes in outputs A, B, C, and D, not usually on a day-to-day basis, but probably more at a couple days or at a weekly cadence, you're going to see enough shift or volatility in changes there that indicate what's happening, and then you can start to prepare your inventory in accordance. And again, if you're following the principle of sending an inventory weekly, then you're able to be very nimble in adjusting to these changes. If you're trying to predict this once a year or once 2 times a year, you're just massively increasing the likelihood of being able to be accurate. Sorry, massively increasing the likelihood that you're not accurate and you're not able to capture the nuances of the changes in the output metrics.
Can you touch on a little bit more? Because this is something else that was, I think I maybe intuitively knew it to some degree, but you really highlighted it, saying that Amazon is rewarding you when you control your inventory better. I mean, I don't know what you would call it, like a just-in-time inventory type model where it's like they want 1 or 2 weeks in there. When you do get that right, like when you're doing it, like you're recommending like once or like biweekly shipments in, and you're really getting your inventory under control where there's no long-term or no over a month, how is Amazon rewarding you? I mean, are you getting, what is the impact for a seller that really manages their inventory well?
Yeah, maybe the best way I could articulate this would be a case study or an example. So we had a partner client. They sell products within the household supply space. So garbage bag, toilet paper, paper towels. They're doing about $1 million a year when we started working together. The first thing that we did was right-size their catalog to make sure that their SKUs were set right for the e-commerce customer. After that, we understood their pricing, where they were lined up, and then started to work on content and copy in association with the customer that they needed to be speaking to. That took them to about $12 to $15 million over the course of about 2 years after getting all of the basics right and speaking to the customer the right way. And they ran that, and about a year later, they only did about $15 million, and they weren't really moving the needle. It wasn't until we added in eventually perfect, took them about 2 years to get perfect with their execution of their supply chain. But after 2 more years, so the 4th year in, we broke over $170 million on the platform. And so that's a little bit of an outlier for sure. Not every brand and every SKU is going to has that market potential. The carrying capacity might not be that large for the category you play in. In this case, it was. But that's an example of they did everything right. And so $170 million versus what I said, 15 was that next one. So almost just 10% of their market potential was accomplished with all the things that you hear about on YouTube videos or you look up in blogs. The bulk of their business was driven by supply chain optimizations. Around 90% of their carrying capacity for the market was all supply chain optimizations. Now, that unlock is irrelevant if you don't have if your product isn't the right product, your pricing isn't right, your copy isn't right, you're not speaking to the customer the right way. So that's important. They're the very, very important fundamentals, building blocks. But after that and within that, supply chain is the unlock to the whole marketplace, really. And if you don't do it, someone's going to become a data-driven client and come in and undercut you because they will get the supply chain part right.
This is fascinating. I almost feel like we don't have enough time to keep going. We have so many topics that I want to talk about with this because it's intriguing to me. I think what we have to do is we've got to get you back on down the road, and we'll get you back on the show again and talk about it. So we will do that. But before we move on, people that are listening, obviously, I mean, this can make a big impact. I mean, I heard you say you're guaranteeing $170 million for any new client that comes on.
That's what I heard too.
Potential is there.
That's what I heard. No, so let everybody know, how can they start working with you at Data Driven?
Yeah, you can schedule time with us on our website. So our website's datadriven.com. It's D and then the number 8, A and then driven.com. I see it down there. Thanks, guys. Yep. And little trick, if you talk to me specifically, if you say you're an Amazon agency, even if you're not, even if you're just one seller, you can book time right on my calendar and we can have a conversation and talk specifically about your business. Otherwise, you're in great hands as well with my sales director, Kevin. He also has a lot more availability. Probably talk to him like 30 minutes from now. But anyways, that's how you get a hold of us. We'd love to have a chat with you and learn about your business and see how we might be able to help.
Well, I encourage everybody who's listening to definitely do that. Take him up. You get to talk to him. He's telling you exactly how to get a direct call with Nader. So definitely do that. It's data. So it's d8adriven.com. Go check out their website. Nader, we're going to get you back on 100%. I want to dive into more of this. This is really fascinating, and I think it's timely right now. And selfishly, this is something I need to focus more on. I'm sure, Chris, you probably can say the same.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a part where we all kind of skip it. We just order 500 units and throw it in and see what sticks. And
Yeah,
that's not the right way to do it.
Yeah,
it's also not very sexy, and it's not I don't know. It doesn't brighten your day. It's not cool new graphics, or I just stole share from this guy's search term, or it's not very sexy. So it's an easy one to skip for sure.
Yep.
I'll tell you what is sexy though, going from 15 million to 170.
So 170, yeah.
There
we go.
That's worth it right there.
Yeah.
All right. Nader, we'll be talking again soon. We really appreciate you coming on. It's been super insightful. So everyone who's listening to this, if you like content like this, if you want to pop on and hear some amazing insights from great people like Nader, make sure that you subscribe to our podcast. If you want to see the live streams, make sure that you like our Solozo's Facebook page, LinkedIn page, and you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can turn on notifications so you get notified when we go live, and could just be the sitting around in the middle of the day and all of a sudden you get great inventory nuggets coming to you. So make sure you do that. And additionally, if anybody out there is struggling with their advertising or their PPC, you're looking for ways to automate and optimize it, Chris and I would love to talk to you at Solozo. You can go to solozo.com. You can book a demo. We'll talk anything Amazon with you, and we'll show you how Solozo can help automate that process for you. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Nader, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you all in the next one.